And we are live. Hey, everybody. Thanks again for coming into Safest Family on the Block. This is episode 2 of our podcast where we interview the people who've done all the hard work on learning about keeping families safe so you can just go ahead to apply what they've learned. Today, we're talking with Justin Schorr, a captain in the fire department for, it's San Francisco, right? The city of San Francisco, or?
Correct. City and County of San Francisco.
Good Lord, that's like a big deal.
It is. Yeah, I like to think so anyway.
Yeah, Justin and I knew each other in college, and that's a longer time ago than I intend to admit to any of y'all, but he and I are both kind of constantly amazed that we're trusted with adult responsibilities, like being a captain in a fire department.
Yeah, I like to think that our friendship, and when we talk about where we met, matches up nicely with the beginning of every Star Wars feature a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes, indeed. And I mean, they trust us both with children now, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I had a friend come to me and say, when did you know you were ready to be a dad? And I told him, I'll call you when I am. And my daughters are 8 and 10. So
I think that's pretty much the experience of most parents that I know too. And one of the purposes of this here podcast, that, you know, we worry a lot. It's been said, I can't remember who, but you don't really understand fear until you've been a parent, until your heart's wandering around outside your body.
Yep.
And we talked with Tom Callis last time about fire as a danger, as a statistically likely danger. It's still, you know, most families don't end up having a fire in the home, but compared to some of the other things that we worry about a lot, stranger abduction, suicide, drug addiction, it's actually more common than a lot of the things parents spend a great deal of time thinking about, wondering about. And so could you talk to us a little bit about that, about the realistic stats on house fires and just the background and the context of this?
Sure. Just real quick, the National Fire Protection Association, which is pretty much the not necessarily governing body of fire services, but they set forth nationally recognized standards. They also keep track of residential fires, residential deaths, injuries, and also firefighter deaths and injuries. In 2015, they report, and I'm reading off their site here, 365,500 residential fires in the United States, resulting in over 2,600 deaths. Now, if you think about that, you might say, well, fire is dangerous and people die. But if you also think about a lot of the preventative things that we can do to actually stop fires from starting, growing, and killing us, most of these deaths are completely preventable. You know, just yesterday, we're recording this on, January, where are we? 13th. So January 12th, yesterday, 6 children died in a fire in Baltimore, Maryland. 6. That's going to be added to this stat for 2017. So when we look at it as firefighters, as not just the ones that respond to the scene, but the ones that are in the department and nationally with the NFPA, what was it that led to that death? And most of the time, it is a lack of fire warning systems, smoke alarms or fire alarms.
Wow. And that's one of the things about this that I think is really important, that I really hope parents internalize, about how preventable fire deaths are in most cases.
Yes.
And we're going to talk on another time about how to escape from a fire if it happens. But you've got a wealth of knowledge, both from the training you've had and the times you've seen it go wrong, about how to, A, keep a fire from happening in the first place, and B, how to set systems up in your home so that your family can be aware of a fire as quickly as possible. And I think that conversation begins with smoke detectors and fire alarms.
Actually, it's going to begin, Jason, before we even get to detecting the fires. We want to try to eliminate fires in the household as much as possible. What that means is no open flames. You know, if you want to have candles, have a nice ambiance, they make some really great flickering LED candles nowadays. I understand there's kind of that romance with the candles. We really need to get past that. That is an extreme danger to have open flames in the home. You need to make sure you're heating your home only with a furnace that's been inspected. In most municipalities, I know for mine and probably yours, you can call up the local public utility and they'll come by and do a safety check on your furnace. Have them come by and do that. Make sure that's working properly. Never use a generator indoors. Never use propane heaters indoors. Everything that says don't use indoors, do me a favor, read the label. Don't use it indoors. You need to make sure if you're using a space heater that it's not plugged into a mobile power strip. Most heaters this time of year in the winter or fires are caused by portable heaters, either plugged into an extension cord and they overheat, or the heaters are placed too close to flammable items like blankets. Those are the best ways to keep fire from starting in your home. Now, that's not going to eliminate the risk of fire. There's still electrical shorts, there's still a number of other things that can go wrong. So, as soon as you've eliminated every possibility of fire being in your home, that's when we take detection under our wing and really get it going. And they make some amazing smoke detectors these days. If you're big into the apps, you can go and get the Nest or another smart smoke detector that'll send you a text when it goes off. I would hope that I hear it go off before I need the text. But maybe you're on vacation and you get a text from your house that says, hey, there's smoke in here. You can call your neighbor and find out what's going on. We were talking earlier about making sure that we change the 9-volt batteries on our smoke detectors whenever we change the clocks. You want to do it every 6 months. New smoke detectors are coming out with a 10-year built-in battery. Now, you might say to yourself, well, what if the battery fails? Believe it or not, Jason, one of the biggest problems we find when we go to a lot of these fires is we'll go into the house and we'll pull the smoke detector off the wall. It might be a little melted, and we'll look inside and there's no 9-volt battery. And we'll ask the occupants, well, why did you take the battery out? Oh, because it goes off all the time. Like you said, maybe there needs to be a bacon button. Hey, I'm cooking. Boop, reset.
Wow. So these people actually took the battery out of their smoke alarm because it was annoying because they got so many false positives.
Yes, and another thing is, do you know what the most common bird sound in America is?
Huh.
Sorry, it's my own little joke. It's the chirping of a dying smoke detector. When your, when your smoke detector beeps every 40 seconds, that means the battery needs to be changed.
I'm going to indulge in telling a family story, but my nephew actually became expert at imitating that chirp.
Really?
And spent about 6 months driving his mother insane.
Wow. Because we go on medical calls, and I'll go into other people's houses and I'll hear the chirp and I'll say, you need a new 9-volt battery. And they actually don't even hear it anymore. They've completely blocked it out.
Wow.
So not only is that smoke detector not going to work properly when it's time, but people aren't even recognizing that it's trying to give you a signal that something's wrong. So that's one of the reasons that they're going to the built-in battery that lasts 10 years.
Okay. And for those of us who still have the older battery, the older smoke alarm that you need to replace the batteries, the current advice is to, on fallback day and on spring forward day, you put in a new battery.
Yeah, and the great thing about that is it's all over the news. You remember, and you're already going around the house cursing at yourself that you have to do it. So throw a couple 9-volt batteries in your pockets, and every time you're in a bedroom, a common hallway, or a separate floor where you should have the smoke detectors, you're putting in the new batteries, or just run down to the home improvement store, get yourself a 2-pack. I think they run about $50 nowadays for a 2-pack, and you're done for 10 years. Done.
Yeah. Now I've got the solid state ones now when I replaced them a couple years back, and I've been testing them on fallback and spring forward day. Am I being a little too paranoid, or is that a bad idea? Good idea?
Actually, you may not be paranoid enough. Check the user manual. You should be testing it monthly.
Oh, interesting. So I think I accidentally do that with my cooking at
And
least
that's
once
the
a month.
thing. That's the great thing is if your smoke detector goes off while you're cooking, it's working. It's doing its job. Tell it thank you. Open up a window, remove the pan from the fire, try to decrease the amount of smoke. You'll be fine.
Excellent. Excellent. Now you had listed just a moment ago the different places that smoke alarms should be. Could we go over that list again a little more slowly? Talk
Sure.
about the recommendations, talk about the building codes.
So there are very little residential building codes when it comes to fire protection safety. You'll notice that in every building you go into and every hotel you stay at has fire sprinklers. But most people get nervous when they talk about fire sprinklers in their home. All I hear from people is, well, what if a pipe breaks? Well, you got a bathroom upstairs, don't you? What if that pipe breaks? The media, unfortunately, and I like to use media as movies, TV, everything, makes you think that if one sprinkler breaks, they all go off. Well, only the sprinkler near the fire is going to open. That's the one thing people need to get through. So when you talk about fire codes in private residences, the fire marshal has very little authority over anything. So it's really incumbent upon the occupants to make sure that it's safe. So what the NFPA recommends is one smoke detector per level, at least one smoke detector in each shared hallway. So if you've got a hallway with 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, whatnot, you want to have one in that hallway. And then in each bedroom needs to be a separate smoke detector.
Oh, wow.
And you can change the types, actually. You don't have to have just 9-volt everywhere. Many homes require, or don't require, but have the option of putting in a smoke detector that has a wall supply of power with a battery backup.
Huh.
So you can have them all linked together. So if one goes off, they all go off, which is nice. But you also have the option of mixing up the types. And you talked earlier about different ages and age groups where we bring in the exit plan. You can also bring in, for the age groups, different types of smoke detectors. So when our first daughter was 4 or 5, I installed a smoke detector in her room that let me record my own voice as part of the alarm. So it would sound an audible alarm, and then it would have my voice saying, "Fire in Morgan's room, fire in Morgan's room."
Huh.
So if I woke up in the middle of the night and heard my own voice, I knew that there was smoke in the baby's room. We tested it once a month, and the wife said, "You just like hearing your own voice," but maybe that's something you don't need in your room. Fire in the kitchen. Some of these network linked ones with the apps will let you know where the fire is, and it's got speakers. So if there's a fire in the basement, all the other smoke detectors will tell you there's a fire in the basement. So there's a lot of options that can fit your family.
Wow, and it seems like maybe hearing your voice might also help your child not panic in the middle of a fire.
Yeah, and you can also record it with instructions. Get low, stay low, feel the door. I think there was maybe a 5 or 6 second window of you to say something before it needs to alarm again and set off. But you could just give it basic instructions. It could be something, maybe you have someone in your home that speaks another language that you want to put something in their language that tells them what to do. Who knows? The possibilities are endless when we can customize it. And I love that the manufacturers of these devices have included those customizations to really help people make it their own instead of the old little popcorn's done indicator.
Wow. Okay. So is there a brand that you recommend, or that the powers that be in fire and rescue recommend?
Not necessarily. What you're looking at is, if you see anything that's got the NFPA logo, it's a little black box with a red flame in it. That's endorsed by the National Fire Protection Association. I'm not sure if they do or not. You want to make sure that you're buying them from a sealed package. You don't want to buy one used, of course. Could be tampered with. You also want to make sure that you keep, when you do buy them, that you keep an idea of when you bought it. So
Okay.
you know when to replace it, when to change the batteries. But as far as brand, I'll be honest with you, Jason, if they're out there, they're good. Tested by Underwriter Laboratories. They have to meet certain requirements to be able to sell them as a smoke detector. So you're really good to go.
So basically anything we found at a Home Depot or a Lowe's will do the job admirably, and we don't need to worry that much about it.
Yeah, so your basic run-of-the-mill 9-volt smoke detector, maybe you run you $20. And while you're there, ask them, hey, what other options are there? And they'll show you. There's probably a good 8 or 10 different options at each of those big box stores. I've even seen them for sale at the grocery store.
Okay. And again, whatever we decide to in terms of how fancy we want to get, how many bells and whistles, we want one in each shared hallway, at least one on each level, and one in each bedroom.
Yes. And I also recommend putting one outside in the garage, especially if you've got your furnace, your washer, dryer, you're going to be parking a car in there. The building code does state that there has to be a 1-hour fire break between your garage and your home. So make sure that wall, we'll go back to fire safety real quick. Make sure that wall is not breached in any way. Doors to crawl spaces. Make sure that your door to your garage has an automatic close feature and that it latches shut. Make sure you don't have a pet door or anything like that in it. And throw a smoke detector out there. Why not? You never know when you're sitting in the room and the smoke detector goes off in the garage. You never would have known.
Okay.
I've even got one I've got a shop out back. I have a smoke detector in my shop just so I can hear if something goes on and I'm not watching.
That makes sense. Okay. And at $20 a pop, it's certainly worth it.
It's the cheapest peace of mind you can get. Now, the $20 ones are going to require 2 9-volt batteries a year. Those run about $1.59. Like I said, I think you can get a 2-pack of the 10-year sealed for about $40, $50. Definitely worth it.
Outstanding. And so that kind of fire detection is your first line of defense, if you will, between a fire that starts and your family's safety.
I would argue, Jason, that's the first line of offense because our defense is preventing fire. If the smoke detector alerts us of a fire, we're now in offense. We're no longer trying to prevent it. We are trying to escape it and block its growth.
Okay, outstanding. So on the topic of defense, then, what are some other things we can do to defend ourselves from fire? You talked about avoiding open flame. Obviously, if you're still smoking, quit for a lot of reasons. But if you're not ready to do that yet, quit smoking in bed or any other time you're sleepy or drunk. What are some other big things?
Number one, quit smoking. You'll live longer. Number one, you're going to smell better. Number two, and we still go to people where fires start because they were smoking in bed. You're absolutely right. We want to make sure we eliminate power strips, unnecessary electrical loads. So if you're adding power strip to power strip and splitter, spend the money, a couple $100 to call out an electrician to put another plug in the wall, especially space heaters. Space heaters need to go directly into the wall. Do not use a power strip with a space heater. Another thing you need to do is be very careful when you're cooking. You'd be surprised, Jason, how many people will deep fry some potatoes. They'll go off and get distracted on the phone, and all of a sudden the oil bubbles over, and we've got a kitchen fire. And what's the first thing they try to do with a kitchen fire? Well, you throw water on a fire. You throw water on a grease fire, now you have a larger grease fire. So
in our home, we have a gas stove in our home, so that risk of fire is a little higher than with an electrical. And we buy bulk salt in a gallon container that I also use for cleaning and treating my skillet. Mm-hmm. But the last time I had a fire where the grease boiled over, we have that on hand for that specific reason, because you don't want to use water on that.
Exactly. If a fire is contained to the pot, you want to turn off the heat. If you can, use your oven mitt to turn the handle off, electric or gas. Turn off the heat, put a lid on it. Suffocate it. Do not take the lid off until the fire department gets there. I don't care how small you thought the fire was. Call it in, let them get there. We need to do something we call, Jason, searching for extension. There's a possibility that fire got so hot that something behind the wall has caught fire. You won't see that fire until later on tonight as it rekindles and it sets off your smoke detector. So anytime there's a fire in your home, call the fire department. We love nothing more than racing to a fire and find out that they didn't need us because they were doing it right.
And I think that's an important point, that I think some people are hesitant to call the fire department because they don't want to be a false alarm. They'd be embarrassed by a false alarm. They'd feel like they were wasting your time. But I think I'm hearing from you that no.
Yeah, a false alarm in this instance would be if someone says that the stove was on fire and it wasn't and they called us, that would be a false alarm. If there was a fire and you extinguished it and we got there, we're going to give you a high five. I'll be honest with you. That's not a false alarm. That's a family practicing good fire safety practices.
Excellent. And I wanted to ping on one specific thing you pointed out, that the fire could have gotten hot enough to ignite something behind the wall. One of the things about thermodynamics and fire is that combustion is a matter of temperature, not a matter of direct contact with the flame. So a fire can set something else on fire even though it doesn't touch it.
That's absolutely right. And that's why people sit in front of a fire and not above it to get warm. You could sit above it and get warm, but you also sit next to it. It's that radiant heat that comes out from the fire. That's our number one concern. It's not direct flame contact. That's why you can run your hand through a candle, no problem, but it's still warm on the outsides.
Okay. So again, just because we don't see the fire spread doesn't mean it isn't spreading. And that's why we call the fire department to come in and confirm.
That's right. We can not only use our experience and our different techniques of being able to assess, okay, that pot of oil burning for that long would have left this discoloration on the wall, but now we have thermal imaging cameras where we can actually use a camera, a TIC, T-I-C, to look at the wall and determine if the wall is hot, and if so, we can open it up and make sure there's no fire extension. Okay,
cool. I love living in the future. I really do.
What a marvelous technological age we live in.
I know.
As Captain Aubrey once said.
So, where were we? We were at don't smoke, don't overload your wires, because a heater is basically an overloaded wire. That's how heaters work. Yeah, so if you're doing it accidentally, you're increasing the temperature in your wells. Yeah. And then care while cooking. What are some other big things to pay attention to prevent fire in the home?
Those are really the biggest ones, I'll be honest with you. Overloading electrical circuits, open flames, and cooking errors. And it's mainly just forgetting you had stuff cooking. If you've had a night of drinking and you're hungry, please microwave something. Don't put a pizza in the oven. When you go to the couch to lay down and watch a show, you're going to wake up 2 hours later to firefighters screaming and shaking you awake in a smoke-filled room. We had a guy, when I was working in the city, we had a guy 3 times. We went on the guy in a couple months. He'd come back after a late night of drinking, throw one of the pizzas in the oven, and then pass out on the couch. We break down the doors. We come in the windows. When we see smoke, we're coming in, and we're coming in hot.
And over a guy who forgot he was cooking his pizza.
A $3 pizza in the oven. Yeah, it's not worth it. Have a corn dog or something, in the microwave.
Outstanding. Well, that's really useful information, Justin. I really appreciate you coming on. I'd like to close with the questions that will be. We're second episode so far, so we don't really have traditions, but I'd like to kind of start this. I've got 5 big questions for you to kind of close out with. And the first one is, what is the thing that parents don't know that you really wish all parents knew? If you had a genie bottle, if you could wave a magic wand and make every parent in the world know this thing, what would it be?
That barfing is normal.
Okay.
Barfing is perfectly normal. If it goes on for more than a day or it changes colors, call 911. Other than that, light fluids, rest, introduce things slowly back into the diet, bread, rice, mild foods, bland foods.
The brat diet, right?
The brat diet.
Bananas, rice, applesauce.
Whatever they're into. But when your kid barfs once at 1 o'clock in the morning, you don't need to call 911. That's what I wish every parent does.
Excellent. And that's important, not only just knowing what's really dangerous, but the things that are fairly normal, and you can put your mind at ease a little bit. There's a great book on that, Baby 411, that is an absolute lifesaver on exactly that thing. It's basically a list of everything that could be going on with your kid, and 80% of it is, don't worry about it.
Yep.
About 15% of it is, don't worry about it unless this happens. And then 5% is, call EMS right now.
Yeah. That's pretty much what it is. 95% is they'll be fine, and 5% is we're leaving.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So kind of a similar question. What didn't you know 20 years ago, or what didn't you know when you became a parent that you know now and you wish you'd known back then?
Ooh, kind of goes along the same lines, but you touched on it perfectly when you said earlier you don't really understand what life is about until your heart is walking around outside of you. I always thought that having kids would be fun. Having kids is the best thing I ever did. So I wish 20 years ago that I could have known how amazing it is and been able to look forward to it.
But not start then, because having the kids a little later in life is really great. I had my first baby at 38, and I love the balance and the maturity that you can bring to it that I don't know if I would have been able to handle it at 22, but I agree. I think I would have liked looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm right in there. We had our first at 30, so I think we were right at that perfect spot.
Excellent. Okay, third question. Is there a book, a video, a podcast, a talk, any form of media that if you could have everybody read it, watch it, experience it right now to help keep their family's safety is safer, especially about fire, what would it be? What is it?
I would say definitely visit nfpa.org and look at their Sparky series. It's about preventing fires. Of course, it's a giant Dalmatian in a fire helmet. How could it not be? But really, the best thing, Jason, is don't get too high tech. Get low tech. Find a Saturday afternoon and go to your local firehouse and knock on the door and just ask them, hey, do you have anything we can do to help keep our house fire safe? You're going to be leaving with plastic helmets, with Edith exit drill in the home worksheets. You're going to probably get a tour of the fire engine. The kids are going to love it. You're going to love it. You're going to feel better, and you're going to get a chance to meet the folks that are going to come when something goes wrong. So I would say low tech it, get in the car, go to the firehouse.
Outstanding. And most people are open to that, just kind of on a drop-in basis?
Yep. Just keep in mind, business hours, 8 to 5. We still have our morning chores, and we still have our meals and such. So don't stop by, at the top of lunch hour. But if you're driving by and the doors are open, usually there's a public parking area. Knock on the front door. It is a house. We do live there. And somebody will come to the door and answer your questions.
Outstanding. I did not know that. And that might be on my list of stuff I wish I knew years ago.
Certainly.
Yep. Now, do you personally have a daily practice or regular practice that you do to keep your family safe?
So every 6 months, we practice our exit drill, which is pretty much just a diagram that the girls helped us draw, which shows them where they need to go in case they hear the smoke detector. And they either go out the front door, they feel their door if it's hot. If it's hot, they go out the window. If the door is not hot, they test open the door, look for smoke, close the door, and then open the door again and go out. This is all in the Edith thing. You don't need to be taking notes now. But the most important thing about an exit drill, Jason, and your listeners need to understand, is you need to have a meeting place outside the home. For us, it's our mailbox. If you get out of the house, you go to the mailbox and you wait. You don't go back in. You don't go around the backyard looking for anyone. You get to the mailbox and you wait. When the first fire engine gets there, if someone's missing, you tell them who's missing and where they were last you knew. So if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, my 10-year-old is missing. She's in the middle bedroom down the hallway on the right. That fire engine will shift from putting out the fire to searching for your loved one immediately.
Okay.
So
A question on that. You said yours is by your mailbox. And something I've thought about but not ever gotten a good answer to is our mailbox is across the street. Do you recommend having a meeting place that's not across the street on account of traffic and such?
if you can avoid crossing the street, that'd be great. Mainly because you're going to be in a panic. People driving by, say it's the middle afternoon, are going to be looking at the fire, not in front of them. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mailbox. It can be a tree. It can be a signpost. Just something that's out front of the house where you'll be able to see the first fire engine arriving and be able to pass along the information. Because just as important as telling them someone's missing is telling them everyone's out of the house.
Mm.
Now they can shift from searching to fighting the fire.
Now, ours is the driveway of our next door neighbor.
Perfect.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
Yep. Just so long as everybody knows it and everybody practices it.
Yeah. Because they're going to be having to remember that under stress while scared. And that's hard enough for an adult.
Under stress while scared and possibly half dressed on a 9-degree day.
Yeah. Okay. And my final question for you is, when you get interviewed, including this interview, what's the question you wish people asked you more often?
Why do I do it?
And why do you do it, Justin?
Because I love it.
Okay, and why do you love it?
It's an easy answer. The go-to answer is, I really wanted to give back to my community, and I just get a wonderful feeling when I can make a bad day better. And I found a place where they'll pay me to do that. So the old adage of if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I have a job.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Well, that's about all I've got for you today. And like I promised or threatened, depending on how much people like this podcast, I intend to have you back to talk more about developing a perfect fire plan and also about some other safety factors that you've unfortunately had to deal with over the years as a first responder.
Oh, I'd love to.
For today, thank you so much, Justin. And real quick, tell folks about your podcast.
The Crossover Show podcast is where myself, a firefighter paramedic, and my good buddy Motor Cop, a motor police officer, sit down. It does have an expletive rating. Just let your listeners know this is not a children's podcast. Excuse me. We just sit down and we talk about stuff that firemen and cops need to talk about. You might think that everybody that runs around with red lights and sirens kind of believes the same things and does the same things. Couldn't be farther from the truth. So if you're looking for a good laugh, you love good beer, and you don't mind a couple of F-bombs here and there, the Crossover Show on iTunes, just look for us. We've been doing it for years now. We're coming up on our third 100th episode. Because like your show, we started it, and then we rebooted, and now we're rebooting again. So it's the 90th episode. We've been doing weekly episodes for 90 straight weeks now, and we're very proud of it. 51 5-star reviews on iTunes, and it's a lot of fun, and we love it.
Outstanding. Well, thanks again, Justin, and everybody, tune in next week for episode 3, and thank you for joining us. I hope this was helpful, and talk to you next time, guy.
See you.
Bye, everybody.